Hey, have a look at now what's making news in print this morning. We're joined by the Deputy Director at the Australia Institute, Ebony Bennett. Ebony, very good morning to you.
G'day, thanks for having me.
Great to see you. Now, a lot of focus, including in the Canberra Times this morning, is the ceremonial opening of Parliament yesterday, with a focus in particular of the batch of new MPs.
Yeah, look, what a great photo on the front page of the Canberra Times. First day of the 47th Parliament. And here you've got three of the new independents, part of a much bigger crossbench. And boy, those changes from the last election were visible on the floor of the Parliament yesterday. A much smaller coalition benches with many fewer Liberal and National MPs, and just a much bigger crossbench filled with new Greens and new independents there, and of course Labor sitting on the government benches. And already I think you're seeing these independents having a big impact on this new Parliament, with Labor negotiating some sensible improvements to its 43% emissions reduction target legislation. So yeah, big changes here in the Parliament and very visible in the chamber.
And they do pomp and ceremony pretty well, don't they, on opening days?
They absolutely do. I mean, that beautiful welcome to country ceremony at the front of Parliament House with the smoking ceremony. I just thought it was a wonderful opening to Parliament, and hopefully has set the tone for what should be a much more collaborative term of government.
Meanwhile, Ebony, the Australian, it's focusing on the rapid rates rise driving crash fears.
Yeah, new inflation figures are expected out today, and they're thinking that the inflation rate will go from about 5% to about 6%. RBA will obviously be looking at interest rate rises to combat that. And the real problem here for the economy is that interest rate rises are a very blunt instrument, and we know that a lot of inflation has been driven by an increased share, company profits rising essentially, but it's workers who are really being asked to make the sacrifice here. And you know, there's a lot that can be done on the fiscal side of the equation, but at the moment, interest rates really are looked to as one of the only tools in the toolbox. I know the government is looking at fiscal measures to really put downwards pressure on inflation, but it's really the corporate sector that has to tighten its belt here. The burden shouldn't rest on workers. So lots of news out on inflation today, and an economic statement expected in the Parliament from the Treasurer on Thursday.
Yeah, which Jim Chalmers, the Treasurer, says will be confronting. You make a very good point about the corporate sector, every stakeholder in the economy, Ebony, having to play a role here. But you also rightly say interest rate increases are such a blunt instrument, especially if we're talking about pretty much locked in another at least 0.5% rate rise next month, possibly up to 0.75%. That's it. And I know the Reserve Bank keeps talking about, you know, lots of Australian families have the buffers and that can handle this, but that might be correct at a macro level. But around various kitchen tables in this country, these interest rate rises are causing lots and lots of pain.
Absolutely, very real pain for households, and inflation is very real for households as well. You know, the price of vegetables has gone up because of flooding in New South Wales. Gas prices are up because of the war in Ukraine. The problem is those profits are accruing to companies and driving up prices. You know, it's not that the gas companies are doing an extra great job and raking in the profits. It's because of the war in Ukraine, and it's consumers who are missing out. So, yeah, a lot of cost of living pressures still for many Australians.
It's a worrying time for families, that's for sure. Meanwhile, the Daily Telegraph, they're leading with who knew about this, and that is in regards to that Manly Pride jersey and the fact that it was actually 12 months in the making, and Hugh Jackman was in on the plan. But of course, we now know the players didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, look, it pains me to say this coming from a family of Roosters supporters, but congratulations to Manly for what I think was a genuine attempt here, you know, to have these Pride jerseys be a real symbol of diversity and inclusion and supporting the LGBTIQ community. But obviously it has backfired. They forgot to consult the players, and 7 players have pulled out citing religious, you know, on religious grounds ahead of the next match. So I think Manly has already apologised both to those players for the lack of consultation and also to the queer community in Australia. But I do think this was a genuine attempt, and I think perhaps we should also reflect on the fact that we've got 7 players on one team who are able to cite religious grounds here, but there's still no player in the NRL who's been comfortable coming out thus far. That does point to homophobia still being a problem within the NRL, and I just think Manly, to its credit, has stuck to its guns on this issue, and hopefully the next time this happens, there'll be better consultation with everybody.
You're right. The idea was great. The execution probably could have been a whole lot better, as Des Hasler, the coach, was saying yesterday. But you also correctly hit the nail on the head. And I say this having followed both codes over many years compared to the AFL. The NRL has been, I guess, less on the front foot in terms of embracing the LGBTQ plus community, and you quite rightly say if there's a rugby league player, and we know there are rugby league players who are gay, but they just fear coming out because of the potential blowback that they'd get, which is just a completely appalling situation to be in for any player, for any code in 2022.
Absolutely, and Ian Roberts here, I think, has played such a key role in being an amazing advocate for the community there and for gay players who don't feel comfortable. He's really blazed a trail, but I do think it says a lot that no one has yet followed him. But kudos for all the work that he and the LGBTI community has done. And again, at pains to say it, I hope they lose, but congrats to Manly for doing the right thing here.
Yeah.
Ebony, indeed, it was a great idea, but it hasn't turned out well, that's for sure. Ebony, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.